Devin, when I sent the rundown over to you earlier today, and the first thing you saw at the top of the rundown said Larkin's ass. What was your initial thought coming into today's show?
That this was going to be a very different kind of show, and maybe a well-rounded episode, I might even say.
Yeah, we saw the Charmin Soft commercial, and I'm at that point where, and I work in television, but I'm having trouble deciphering now what's AI and what's not. So when I first saw that, and you see Larkin there tapping his skates, it's like, wait, is that real? Is he really sitting there taking a dump and doing a Charmin commercial? George, did you see it?
Yes, I saw it, and my entire statement for that one, other than "Don't squeeze the Larkin," is I hope that he got a really nice set of golf clubs and a good golf bag.
Yeah, man. I mean, we've met Larkin a few times outside of the rink, and I'll tell you what, he does have a huge butt, dude. He's got this big, rounded butt. Like, you don't really notice it on the ice because he's got his gear on, but like, yeah, he's got a huge butt.
It's the
amazing.
hockey butt commercial.
Man, anything for a paycheck, right, guys?
Golf clubs are hard to buy.
Too bad this isn't episode 71.
Yeah, that's next week.
Great ass!
Welcome to the Flying Octopus podcast, offering a new perspective on Red Wings hockey, as well as all the important news from around the NHL. And now, here are your hosts, Tony Wolak, Devin Little, and Evan Sabourin.
Hey, it's Carter Bear, and you're listening to the Flying Octopus podcast.
Welcome to episode 70 of the Flying Octopus podcast. I am your host, Evan Sabourin, joined today by my co-host, Devin Little, and we're welcoming back our old friend, George Malik from the Malik Report. Good to see you, boys. Kind of a crazy time to do a show right now after what we just saw with the Red Wings game in Washington, but we're going to power through this one. You ever seen an ending like that before, Devin?
Goal off of a camera. That's like they said in the broadcast, 1 in 5,000. That something like that. Even that's crazy. I know.
I don't even think that's right. I don't think it's 1 in 5,000. I think it's more like 1 in an infinite number.
That was David Gorelnik of the Detroit News, who is an excellent photographer and a really nice guy.
Dude, I've actually shot games before up in San Jose, and it is hard. Because you have to, and they don't give you any training when you first go in there. So when you stick your camera through the glass and the play's moving, and it's hockey, play moves fast. You have to sit there and move that thing fast. Because if not, they'll kick you right out if you're not good enough at it. So luckily, I've only done a couple games, but I got lucky in that aspect. But it's a lot harder than it looks. And he looked like he was blushing a little bit on the camera there, thinking that he might have caused that goal. But hey, it worked. It went in, and it was at least helped the Wings steal a point today. On today's episode, we will recap this week's games versus the Kings and the Capitals, a 3-1 loss, and then that funky overtime loss that just occurred here on Thursday night. We'll also get into Ben Chiarot, who signed a 3-year extension with Detroit this week, and the Twitter storm it caused yesterday with the analytics guys versus the eye test guys, which got a little heated, and a lot of name calling going around yesterday. It was kind of uncomfortable. Some of just the way people were calling out nerds and jocks, and it was something else. We're also going to talk about something here that we are all very passionate about today, and it's something George tweeted out earlier this week that got a lot of traction. And we had Keith Gave on our show earlier this season, and we talked about the Red Wings implementing some kind of ring of honor. And I know, George, you mentioned the grind line as being one of those things, and I know you brought that out today, and I saw Keith Gave reacted, to your tweet and really was fired up about something like this. And I want to discuss that with you guys today, because I think there are a lot of Red Wings that are a big part of this history. And now, it being the centennial right now, I think there's something that could be done here, and we'll get into that for a little bit. Before we get started, I'd like to remind everyone where you could find us. You can follow us on Twitter at Flying Octopod. You can also find us on YouTube at The Flying Octopod. Give us a like, give us a subscribe. We would really appreciate it. So, George, glad to have you back, man. It's been a little bit here. How you been doing, bro?
I'm all right. Ant's a little nicked up, but other than that, we're okay.
All right. How's the weather treating you boys back there in Michigan?
I'm not allowed to say how cold it is because there's an expletive involved in it. But I don't mind it. I'm a winter baby.
All right, boys. Well, let's dive in, and we're going to start at Tuesday at home versus the Los Angeles Kings. Heading into this one, the Red Wings had 5 games remaining before the Olympic breaks coming up here on February 6th. Patrick Kane entered this game still 1 point away from tying Mike Modano for the most points by a U.S.-born player with 1,373. The second period is when Kings got on the board. Travis Hamonic and Albert Johansson got in a kind of a miscommunication battling down low in the boards. Like they both went into the corner there, and then Taylor Ward found Sam Hellenius. Kings went up 1-0. Third period, Detroit's offense kind of came alive because it was pretty stale for the first 2 periods, and I think you guys would both agree with me on that. Kuzmenko capitalized on the power play from Adrian Kempe and Kevin Fiala. Wings would score late here. They pulled the goalie. Jabrinkat gets his 28th, and on that goal, Kane picked up the assist that tied Mike Modano's 1,374 points. But this game was not meant to be. Corey Perry, everyone's favorite hockey player, gets the empty netter and ends it. Wings fall 3-1 over 4 on the power play. Outshot the Kings 28-22, but just couldn't generate any offense until the end. Very stale. What did you see in this game, Devin?
What I saw is kind of the seeds maybe of what we eventually saw for most of the game against the Capitals as well. A team that tried to make some things happen, but for this reason or that reason, just kind of wasn't able to break through. They certainly had their chances. I thought that I don't think they necessarily played bad per se, but a loss is a loss. And it kind of, and I'm kind of leading into what I'm going to say when we talk about the Capitals game too, but it kind of felt like, oh boy, they might be starting to hit a wall here. You know, we're getting into late January they've kind of been avoiding the wall for a while now. It kind of feels like it might have been coming. And that LA game was just one of those games where, you know, they just don't necessarily have the gas they usually do. And it's fine. It's, you know, without the, you know, the future knowledge of how the Washington game would go, you can just chalk it off as one bad game and you kind of move on. But yeah, obviously disappointing to see them squander the opportunity for 2 points against a team that they could definitely go up against and beat on any given night.
George?
I think, as per usual, Devin is making an excellent observation because that they were flat. I mean, it wasn't for the entire game, but it was like one of those situations where, you know, this is how I drink. I'm one of those 2-liter people. And you get the cap on, but not the whole way. And slowly but surely, the bubbles come out, and all of a sudden you're surprised that you're drinking flat pop. And slowly but surely, they went flat. You know, I mean, they had an okay first period, and then from there on out, it was flat. That's my opinion as to how the game went. You know, and then there was the little bubble at the end when DeBrincat was able to score, but other than that, they were flat.
Let's flash forward to Thursday now at home versus the Capitals. Detroit hasn't gone back-to-back games without picking up a point since the end of November. Helene St. James reported this morning that the flu bug has hit the Red Wings locker room. The Red Wings called up Sheldon Dries and Justin Hull from the minors. But a lot of anxious energy in the building tonight for Kane to pass Modano, and ESPN kind of really did it up. I know, George, we talked off air a moment ago, but just Bucci-Gross was a little too much for me tonight. Just a little too overexcited, a little too loud, and a little just trying to make a too big of the moment. And yes, it is a big moment, but it's just I don't know. It's when you watch these ESPN nationally televised games, you want to hear, especially at a game of this magnitude, you want to hear Ken and Mickey making this call. Obviously, Mickey's out right now, but Bucci-Gross was a little too much for me tonight. Did you guys feel that kind of energy? That was just a little over the top?
Yes, sir. One of my tweets was how much I missed Ken and Mickey or Ken and Paul. You know, I should have gone the radio route, frankly, because Bucci-Gross just kept on talking about Tom Wilson, Patrick Kane. It was like it was the battle of wills between two players, and of course, Patrick Kane was going to make history. But Wilson said it was going to be the biggest game of the year, so clear that the Capitals were going to come out on top. Now, he was correct in his proclamation, but it wasn't about the players. And I think that there was, at least from what I saw during the game, there was a sense of relief when Kane's, was able to get that tie-breaking assist, and it's just over with now. They don't have to worry about it anymore. And it's one of those situations where, yeah, they're thrilled, and your kids are jumping up and down, and your family is delighted to have been there, and it's history. But you still have a game to win, And they weren't quite able to do that, in no small part because the Capitals refused to play hockey in overtime.
I think for me, it's like they oversimplified or they focused on two very specific parts of the game, but there was a larger narrative to speak to during that game. That the Capitals had been in a bit of a funk. They're right there in the Eastern Conference playoff chase. They're a team that obviously wants to be in the playoffs. They can't miss while they have Ovechkin. There's kind of this underlying thing that this is probably his last year. He's never announced it. There's that. There's the Red Wings, who are, obviously in territory they haven't been in a long time. And I think there were bigger picture things to talk about. And it felt like like George said, the only things going on were Tom Wilson and Patrick Kane. And while the Kane thing is certainly significant, like you said, Evan, and it did deserve its attention, it didn't deserve all the attention. It wasn't the only thing going on the Red Wings side of the fence, so to speak, in this game. But you wouldn't know by listening to the broadcast.
Yeah, I do like Bucci. I love what he does for the game. I love the way he promotes the game. But yeah, tonight was just too loud, just a little too much. And maybe it's because I'm so used to Ken and Mickey, but just wasn't feeling that tonight. And kind of this, I mean, is this the strangest game we've seen so far for the Red Wings this season? The Red Wings scored that early goal and the celebration was on, only to, ESPN started just going all over it. I mean, they even had it updated on the tickers, on NHL Network, everywhere. And no, it got called back on an offsides. So that was a little anticlimactic, I thought. Nick Dowd scored at the 6:27 mark, and the Caps went up 1-0. Second period, and here we go. How great was this? It's Kane to DeBrincat to, of all people, Mr. newly signed Ben Chiarot. Rips the one-timer to tie the game. What a moment. Family was there. The Wings bench emptied. You even saw Ovechkin, and even the refs came over to the bench to congratulate Patrick Kane. And the kicker for me was them playing Freebird. I thought that was a fantastic choice for Patrick Kane. Congratulations to number 88. I mean, that's not as we said, that's something pretty special to pass a guy like Mike Modano and to be the all-time. I mean, you just think about all the great U.S. players that we've seen in our lifetime and even before our lifetime, that Patrick Kane is now number one. If you had told me 15 years ago that Patrick Kane would become the all-time U.S. leading scorer with the Detroit Red Wings, playing for the Detroit Red Wings, I would have said, what? And then you see Mike Modano come up on the big screen and give his praise to Patrick Kane, another person who finished his career as a Red Wing that people sometimes forget. But yeah, shout out to 88. That a great moment. Great to see his family. It was a pretty special moment in Red Wings history. Third period, Washington took the lead. Dylan Strome with a wraparound. Looks like Gibson got caught up or didn't know where the puck was for a second. Wings actually challenged that. I don't know. How did you guys see the challenge? I wasn't a fan of the challenge on that.
No, it slithered out of his glove, but he never really had it covered to begin with.
Yeah, it kind of felt like one of those where even the coaching staff was maybe a little on the fence about it. And then it kind of came to a point where, are you challenging it or not? And they had to make a call. And it was kind of one of those 50-50, it could go our way type of things. So they obviously went for it. But yeah, would have been one you'd like to see them get on the right side of, but it definitely was a tough one to overturn.
Yeah, and it didn't get much better for the Red Wings. Declan Chisholm then put the Caps up 3-1. Wings pulled the goalie now here, and this is where stuff gets crazy. DeBrincat picked up a loose puck, buried his 29th, opened that easy one. But then the strangest play of all year occurs. And of course, we're going to have to get into how ESPN, bungled that one. With DeBrincat playing the puck down the boards, hits where the camera open that we just talked about earlier, that these camera guys that are down there taking those photos, they have this little glass door with a handle. They've got to rip that out in time But obviously on a play like that, he was positioned to a point where you couldn't really see that puck coming down, because when you're in that corner, getting your camera out, it's hard to see down the side of the glass. And so for a second there, I didn't know how that ruling would work, because I'd never actually really seen that before. I'm sure it's happened before in an NHL game, but I can't remember it happening in a Red Wings game. And yeah, that took a crazy bounce, went right off Charlie Lindgren off the back of his pad. I mean, could you have pictured a crazier way for the Red Wings to tie this game up?
No, not at all. It was
Absolutely.
wild and wacky and woolly.
If it happened in like a TV show or something, you'd be like, well, that's just ridiculous. That wouldn't happen. But here we are.
Yeah, and I was just hoping, man, I was hoping that was the sign that this was going to be the Red Wings night. And of course, it didn't end up turning out that way. Caps in overtime, George, you saw that they weren't really pressing towards the end, and the crowd was giving it to them. What'd you think about that?
I used some words on Twitter that I had to censor. My goodness. They just it was like watching. They milked it to the shootout, and I still have things to say that are probably not appropriate even for a podcast.
Oh boy, Devin. Devin's still trying to figure out what that word is.
Yeah. Popcorn, no. Podcast, no. Anyways, I I don't know. Just overall, I thought kind of more of the same from the LA Kings game. Just a team that kind of got lucky to get a point here, and it was disappointing to see how the shootout played out as well. Obviously, Washington's goalie is visibly going through some ailment of some sort. Even had to be like helped off the ice at the end of it. And to see that the Red Wings not be able to capitalize that, John Gibson not be able to make a save in the shootout, it's a little frustrating. They kind of, like you said, Evan, it felt like they literally got the bounces to go their way, and then they weren't able to capitalize. I mean, literally, if Gibson can stop one of those shots, who knows what happens. I don't fault Larkin for missing his shot.
Off the crossbar.
Exactly, and it wasn't like he like missed it by a mile. We're talking about inches here, but yeah, just disappointing loss. You still got to feel good about them getting a point. Like that streak about them not missing a point in two straight games continues, and that's crazy. So good on them for finding a way to get a point, but it does kind of feel like the wall might be here. Now, on the bright side, if there's a time for the wall to show up, it's probably a good time for it to be right now, because the Olympic break is right around the corner.
Yeah, and the first two goals, Raymond and Kane, Gibson couldn't make one save there. Just one save we needed out of that. And Larkin, I mean, it was a game of inches. Obviously, with the puck hitting that stanchion and going in off Lindgren, and then Dylan Larkin tried to roof it on Lindgren right off the crossbar. So another tough break there. Wings still get the loser point. I thought Gibson played okay in this one outside of the shootout. I know he gave up 3 goals on, just over 20 shots, but that was a frustrating loss. And that's a loss that's, you don't want to have. You want to see that win. You want to celebrate the Patrick Kane moment, but I know it's hard in that locker room to celebrate that, this milestone, because of a key loss for the Red Wings tonight. And when you starting to look back at the Eastern Conference, and gosh, Buffalo is on a heater. They won again tonight, big time. And it's
Buffalo, Boston, Montreal, those teams are not losing.
Yeah,
so the Atlantic Division is just absolutely in fuego right now.
Yeah, and Buffalo is what? I just said it off air, but Buffalo's 17-3-1 in their last 21 games. Like, how absurd is that? And
Alex Lyon.
And Alex Lyon's on a heater too. He's gone 9-0. He's unbeaten in his last 9 starts. He had 37 saves tonight as they shut down the Kings 4-1. So
good for him, by the way.
Yeah, good for him. We love Alex Lyon on this podcast. But yeah, Detroit now still stands second in the Atlantic with 69 points. Nice. But Buffalo's right on their tails, 2 points behind with the game in hand. And Montreal won again tonight, and they're just watching the Avalanche. They just get back-to-back crushed by the Senators and now the Canadiens tonight. So the Red Wings might be hitting them at the right time as they host the Avs Saturday at the LCA, and then they're again on Monday in Colorado at Ball Arena. It was a frustrating week offensively from this team, and I don't know, a lot of people were worried with Simon Edvinsson, who went on the IR this week, if that was going to be a problem, but I don't see the issues from a defensive standpoint this week. Just the offense is just not generating. And I'm curious, like, what are your guys' thoughts on that? Why does this team continue to struggle? And when it happens, it feels like it happens in bunches.
I will say, while I do agree that like I didn't watch this game or either of these games and immediately think the defense is the problem right now, I will say Edvinson's a significant piece of the lineup, and when a piece of that magnitude is removed, it does kind of muddy up everything. Like even if it's not the defensive side, like that's still, it kind of has like a waterfall effect that eventually does affect the offense. It's like I said, when a significant piece is removed like that, you're gonna feel it in some way, shape, or form. But I think it's kind of a combination of things. I think it can be Edvinsson, the loss of Edvinsson. I think it can be the wall that I'm referring to. I also think, you're kind of seeing the inconsistencies from some young players here, right? I know Emmett Finney hasn't been exactly silent recently, but he's, when's the last time he really went on a tear, right? And I don't mean that to like hold him accountable ahead of others, but like he's a young player, right? And then, just up and down the lineup, and maybe, you hate to say this, but maybe there's a little bit of looking ahead to the Olympics going on as well for the three individuals that are going there. It certainly doesn't seem like Siders got his head over there already. It seems like he's very much still got his mind on Detroit, but we're talking about offense here, so maybe the forwards heading over there are already kind of thinking ahead. But it's hard to say that it's any one thing. I think it is kind of a combination of things, but again, the thing kind of going for them is that luckily they don't have a long road ahead before they get a nice long.
I agree completely. The losing Edvinsson, it's continuity of ice time. It's not having to play. It's not being able to shelter Axel, Sandin, Pelika when he's having a shaky game, which he has had from time to time. It's Finney, Van Riemsdyk, and I don't mean to bash JVR either. It's just a situation where the Wings get more and more top heavy when somebody is out that is an important contributor in terms of ice time. And if Gibson doesn't absolutely stand on his head during those games where the energy is just not consistent, and the attention to detail. I mean, what was the Red? Here, hold on. Let me take a peek at this. The Red Wings had 21 shots on goal. The Capitals blocked 23 shots, and the Red Wings missed the net 19 times tonight. I mean, that's not good in terms of shot efficiency. Everybody talks about the Corsi and the Fenwick, and those are definitely metrics that are useful, insightful, but sometimes you just got to get the effing puck on the net, and it was that simple. To me, there was just that delay. The Red Wings over the last two games, let's make a little better pass, let's make a little better shot, let's find the perfect play. And sometimes, as Coach McClellan will say, go north, play north, play north of the puck, real simple, straight lines.
That's crazy. 21 block shots. Red Wings had 15. The other noticeable thing from the box score tonight is that Moritz Seider played nearly 32 minutes.
Jeez.
32 minutes.
That's German engineering right there.
Das geht doch gut.
Yeah. And, you don't want Ben Chiarot played 20 minutes. Jacob Bernard Docker was close to 20 minutes. And Axel Pelika only played 11 tonight. So, yeah, it's a frustrating overtime loss. But at the end of the day, the Wings steal a point. So
we are lucky that we are able to pull hairs and pick apart these situations, because last year at this time it was just before the inevitable fall, the final fall in March. So to some extent, yeah, 1 point in 3 games absolutely sucks, but boy, it's a different world this year.
It is.
And to kind of like build on that point here, we're splitting hairs here. We're talking about missed opportunities while the team is still at the top of the conference. And now I'm sure we're about to talk about how they're retaining their players instead of shipping them off now, right? Like it just kind of this year really kind of magnifies how far the team has come in the last couple of years, and it has been fun in our shoes here to talk about, not just talk about the wins, but even the losses to split hairs. It's not how they completely blew this and they're out of their league and this and that, and they still have a long way to go. They're here, and it's I guess if you're trying to look for the half full approach, it's that despite these losses, they are still, leaps and bounds ahead of where they were even 3 years ago.
Yeah. And we tend to live in the moment with each loss now when the Red Wings do lose. And at the end of the day, you have to look at where they are in the standings and see the improvement. It just sucks that this is the year that the East is just so damn packed. I mean, the Red Wings go on a 3-game losing streak and they're out of the playoff picture. I mean, that could literally happen. We're going to shift gears, though, now and get to our second topic tonight, which is Ben Chiarot. And this kind of set Twitter ablaze yesterday. The Wings signed Ben Chiarot to a 3-year, $3.85 million extension that runs through 2029. It also includes a full no-trade clause in year 1. Year 2, a full no-trade clause until 28 days prior to the trade deadline, which then converts to a 10-team no-trade clause. Year 3, also 10-team no-trade clause. Ben Chiarot will be 38 years old at the end of this deal. Initial thoughts on this extension, Devin?
Well, first I want to say that the no trade turning into a 10-team no trade 2 weeks before the deadline in in the second year of that contract, that's a little wild. If anything, anyone looking at this contract and thinking that they're like married to Chiarot now through the end of his career, I would tell you to look at that clause right there, because that screams we might look to move on from you if the opportunity presents itself. But I digress. I think that this is, and it seems like this is kind of the general sentiment amongst people that have a rational way of thinking of things. It's a fine contract. You probably would have liked to have seen it be 2 years instead of 3, but ultimately, given the AAV on it and the terms of the contract, I don't think you can be too upset. It's kind of a matter of you're dealing with the devil you know instead of the devil you don't know. It's going to be another very shallow free agent pool, so you can't just say, oh, they'd find an improvement in free agency. There literally might not be anybody worth approaching in free agency once that comes. So you kind of keep your continuity with Chiarot. The guys in the locker room are going to be happy about it. It's one thing that maybe gets a little underplayed when you think about the Red Wings defense. You got Moritz Seider, you have Simon Edvinsson, you have Albert Johansson, you have Axel Sandin Pelika, you even have Jacob Bernard-Docker. These guys are all 25 years and younger. Ben Chiarot's basically the dad on that blue line. Obviously Hamonic's there too, and he's older as well, but Chiarot's been there for years now. And for him to come back, he kind of, they got the defense got to keep dad, basically. And that's very much what he's kind of being kept to do. And the other thing that kind of came to mind when I saw the terms of the contract is that's Justin Hall's contract that he's on right now. And like almost the exact same terms. It's 3 years. Hall's is 3.6. This is 3.8. Oh, well. And he's basically being signed to be a third pairing defenseman, just like they did with Justin Hall. And if the time comes where a young defenseman has made Ben Chiarot expendable, guess where they can put Ben Chiarot? Where Justin Hall's been all season, down in Grand Rapids, and it's not going to really hinder them in any way. The cap's rising, 3.8 is going to feel like $3 million, and maybe even less in a few years. So there's all sorts of reasons why this is a good contract for the Red Wings. I know that if you're a big fan of charts, you probably don't like the player, but I don't think that they signed Ben Chiarot in the first place because of charts. I think they signed him for all of the intangibles and just kind of the experience, the dad really of his ability to be the dad of the Blue Line group. And I think that it was good work to get this contract done when they did.
George?
If you look at it, yeah, again, from an analytics perspective, I mean, if you've got a defensive defenseman who doesn't provide a whole lot of shots, who is going to be he can often be a minus player just because there aren't many people cleaning up his mistakes, or to me he's still the player that is probably the toughest on the team. He blocks the most shots. He other than Seider, of course. Seider is the shot blocking machine, but if you're talking about team dad, he will block those important shots against. For better or for worse, he is probably the toughest player on the team, the most likeliest player to drop the gloves. It is all about those intangibles, and it is all about being team dad. There's something to be said for having someone in the position where you can throw him out there with Moritz Seider at the end of the game, which they did on Thursday night, and things go out pretty well. And then you can throw him out with Axel, Sandin, Pelika, and just steady the ship. That's what Ben Chiarot does. He reminds me of the grind line to some extent, because what the grind line would do more than anything is you would get these guys out on the ice when the ship was starting to go tilting off to the side, and you need to get it back on an even keel, and you just throw them over the boards when you're having that kind of situation. And to have a player with that kind of intangible to get paid in his mid-30s at a reasonable amount and be variable in Grand Rapids or tradable with his consent, yeah, fine, good.
Yeah, I don't. Tony Wolek, our other co-host who's been out for on leave, brought up a good point on Twitter yesterday where he said, go ahead and look at the 2026 UFAs for defensemen. You're looking at guys like a 37-year-old John Carlson, a 32-year-old Mike Matheson, Radko Gudas, the top guys, Rasmus Anderson, who's expected to re-sign in Las Vegas. There's not a lot out there. And for this signing, for this season, Axel, Sandin, Pelika, it should be in a third pairing role, essentially. The Red Wings don't have someone better than Axel, Sandin, Pelika. Eventually, what this contract means is you're going to move Chiarot down. You want Chiarot to be that third pairing role guy, and you're hoping next season that ASP is ready full-time for a full-time second pairing role. So I think the contract will age well. I think the 3.85, it's less than what he was making off his last contract. So I think it'll age fine as the salary cap increases, and you have a guy who is known for his physical tenacity. He's not a puck-moving defenseman. He's not going to dictate play. Of course, he scores tonight on a great one-timer. Heck of a shot. You're not going to get a lot of that out of Ben Chiarot, but it was great to see right after he signed this contract. But I think it's the perfect signing because, next year ASP moves into the second pairing role. You can move Chiarot down. The Red Wings aren't looking for top pairing defensemen anymore. You have your 1 and 2 in Seider and Edmondson. You have to think that ASP is going to develop into a solid 3 or maybe even better. I think we've seen enough. I think we've had enough of a sample size to see that ASP is going to be talented, but where he's at now, as far as age and experience, it's going to take some time. It's hard for young players, especially at his size, to come in and be as dominant, but you have your 1, you have your 2, you have your 3. The Red Wings now are looking for parts, and those parts you can either fill in free agency, or you can try some of these guys in Grand Rapids, but the defensive depth so far, it's not what it is. I'm hoping the Red Wings look at defensemen in this year's draft, but the Waylanders, the Tuomistos, the Shai Williams, I don't know if those guys are going to make it. So when you have those three top guys, and you can move Chiarot down to the bottom pairing, then you're looking for it through free agency two guys that can fit in the 4 and the 5 spot. Chiarot can be a 5, a 4, or a 5 if need be down the road. I think with his experience, I think with his, the locker room, like you said, Devin, he's a guy that'll stick up for players on the ice. Those are the kind of guys that intangibles is the word you used. You just don't find everywhere. And I think the familiarity with him and Yzerman likes these kind of players. I think it was a great signing. What I didn't like to see yesterday was all the analytic guys tear it apart. And so it got pretty heated on Twitter yesterday, Devin. I know I texted you about JFresh yesterday, and then the other one is Dom Luszczyszyn was getting it too a lot. And it's the analytics versus the eye test, and it's kind of like more like it's the older school guys like me and George. There wasn't this analytic shit when we were younger. It was all about the eye test. And now,
or even stat sheets. So you were looking at hockey cards and going, "Is this a good player or not such a good player?"
And that's how I will continue to judge players. And I get that analytics are important in this game. I think they're more relevant in baseball than any other sport. But in hockey, you have how many different analytic guys do we follow on Twitter or social media? There's dozens and dozens and dozens, probably hundreds. And yesterday, just to see them battle. So I'm curious where you guys stand between the analytics and the eye test, especially when you're talking about a guy like Ben Chiarot, because like we just talked about, Devin, intangibles don't get measured on Jay Fresh's player cards, right? And I think there's too many intangibles, or there's too many different things that go into how they reflect on their player performance on his cards that don't tell you the whole story of the kind of player that Ben Chiarot is.
Yeah, it's true. And I mean, another thing that hasn't been mentioned yet is that prior to this season, Chiarot had an A on his jersey almost every single night. Like he's at this point, he's a leader in the room without a letter. And that speaks for something too. That's one of those intangibles. Listen, I'm with you. I follow plenty of these stats guys as well. I think there's a lot to be learned from it, and I think that you can really make if you follow the stats arguments on some things, you can find some hidden gems in terms of players. But I also think that if you lean too much on it, you're going to miss some things that you just can't quantify. And I mean, you can say the same thing for the eye test too, right? If you go strictly off of eye test, then you're going to miss some of those hidden gems, right? But it's figuring out how to use the stats in conjunction with your eye tests that ultimately allows you to be a successful evaluate any professional sports, really. But not to kind of jump, branch off too far here, but I am kind of wondering, I want to pick your brains here real quick. So one quick reaction I saw was that this is maybe a reflection of the organization's opinion of Albert Johansson. I actually didn't take it to mean that. I actually don't really think this involves Johansson at all. I do think that it maybe speaks to the organization's confidence in their current crop of defensive prospects. Like that to me is more of like, I don't know if William Wallander is ever going to get a shot in Detroit now. I don't know if Ati Tuomisto will. I think that Chiarot might have officially blocked them. Is that kind of similar to what your read was?
It's hard to say. I mean, there's a word that precedes block again that I'm going to refrain from using because this is a family show. But yeah, that's always the question when you sign a veteran is who does this who exactly does this block? Who does this prevent from earning a chance? And in 2 or 3 years when Chiarot is slower than he already is, and the beautiful as you've so expertly pointed out, the beautiful meshing between the fact that the Red Wings have an analytic department and the Red Wings have a scouting department. You need those two things. So that's my take on the Twitter war. You need these two things. They're entwined. So, get over yourself, Dom. Get over yourself, Jay Fresh. And get over yourself, George Malik. Definitely. But yeah, that's always the question when you sign a veteran. Who exactly is it going to eliminate the chances for? Because you want to see Wallander, you want to see Booyam. You want to see Tuomisto, somebody that hasn't been mentioned that I'm a huge fan of, Anton Johansson.
Right.
Those are the players that you worry about, but we have definitely seen from the management perspective a shift from Blashill era veteran wins the tie to best player wins the tie, at least. That is a progression that you want to see by the time that we're in the third year of Ben Chiarot's deal. If Benny can't keep up, then you want one of these young kids to get in there. Ben fits the eye test real well. He fails the analytic test spectacularly, but he does a job out there.
If you look at it from this standpoint, that, like I said, you have Sider, you have Everton, you have ASP, and now you have Chiarot signed for 3 years. So now you're essentially, you only need to fill 2 spots. Now you do that through free agency or trades. And I don't know if you heard Buccigrass and the ESPN crew mention about 1,000 times tonight that how much cap space and that Steve Yzerman has and trade chips that he has moving forward. They built up a very, very good prospect system, and now is the time. But is Yzerman going to take a big swing before the Olympic break or after the Olympic break for this playoff stretch that's going to eventually come here? I think now is probably the time to look for it. It doesn't have to be like a big, over the top move. Although I'd love to see Zach Werenski in a Red Wing uniform. Who wouldn't?
We all?
Yeah, but it's the possibility is there, and it's up to Yzerman what he wants to do here. But let's not go mortgaging the future. And that's what you keep seeing, like, these people on Twitter saying that, Yzerman's, drops the ball or he doesn't have the guts to go out and make the big move. But, we've said this 1,000 times on this show. He's building for long-term sustainability, long-term success, something that he was a part of in the 90s when the Red Wings went on all their crazy runs. So I don't know. I think a move's got to happen here. I'm still really interested to see what the whole story is on Simon Edvinsson. They've been very low-key, nonchalant on revealing any information.
That's been AHL injury policy, which is just he's got an injury, and you don't want poor Bob Kaiser to get in trouble because Bob will tell you what exactly is ailing the player, and the AHL's injury disclosure policy is no.
Yeah, we've never even heard the details on Carter Mazur yet.
No, yeah, it's just no. Can't play. But yes, especially as Ken Daniels would say, speaking of another excellent announcer, especially in the era of gambling, you wonder how teams are getting away with upper body, lower body, no body. But that's where we're at with Edvinsson. And if he was bad enough to pull up the horse before the break and say, okay, we need to get you out for a couple of weeks, that scares you in the same way that those unfounded reports that Patrick Kane had broken his hand or his wrist with that slide into the boards when he missed more than a couple of games earlier this season. That's where you just, the unknown is what terrorizes you.
Devin, if you had to guess right now, when do you think the earliest is that Yzerman would make a trade for a defenseman that could fit in the middle pair?
Earliest would be within the next couple of days here. I thought when there was that big announcement earlier today where Justin Hall and Sheldon Dries both got called up, I was kind of wondering if the roster was being shifted around to accommodate a rather large move, but doesn't seem like that was the case. But it's on the table. I think that there's definitely merit to getting if you're going to do a big deal, there's definitely merit to getting it done before the Olympic pause. Because one of the maybe undersold things here is that, there's this pause and, your Olympic participants are going to be over there doing their thing. But I believe it's the players that don't go have a week or two off, and then they can resume practices. You have this period of time where if you bring in this big player, they might play a game or two with you before the pause, and then They have time to, if they need to, move, find a place to be for the rest of the season. They have the time to do that. They also have the time to kind of, get some practices in that don't necessarily have the pressure of we play tomorrow attached to them. They can maybe start to build a little bit of chemistry. Obviously, there's going to be some missing players there, but I think it's just there's time that can be used to kind of soothe over what would be an adjustment period for a big acquisition or any acquisition for that matter. But I obviously as the days go by and we get closer and closer to the roster freeze, it seems like it's going to be closer to the actual trade deadline. But I definitely still think a trade's on the table in the next couple of days here.
George, I saw your comments this week on Twitter about a conversation that we actually had with Keith Gave earlier this year, and we kind of brought up this the question of whose number would go up in the rafters next. And he mentioned some interesting names, and one of the names he mentioned, and this is where we got into the Ring of Honor talk, was Chris Draper. Now, Chris Draper is obviously not the kind of player you would retire a jersey for. He's not a Hall of Famer. He's not one of the all-time greats, but you can't understate what he meant to this organization. A guy like Chris Draper, who played 17 seasons with the Red Wings, gave his blood literally,
Both his hips.
Heart and soul.
He had both of his hips replaced.
Both of his hips. His face basically had to be replaced after the Claude Lemieux hit. Still a member of this organization, will always be known as a Red Wing. Guys like him, guys like Darren McCarty or Kirk Maltby, the grind line as a whole. We said when we talked to Keith, we talked about Vladimir Konstantinov, and I still don't think anyone's ever going to wear that number. I don't know why they won't go ahead and retire it. That's what I'd pound the table for. And I know people are pounding for Datsuk and Zetterberg next, and deservedly so. But it's guys like that I think the organization needs to find a way to honor. And when you look at the success that the Fedorov retirement jersey ceremony had, and I was there in town for it, I think this is something that could be done. And, George, you talk about this Ring of Honor. Now, there's other teams in the NHL that do this kind of Ring of Honor thing. And, you have to be very selective in all of this, even with the jersey retirement ceremony, because eventually you're going to run out of numbers. But as far as a Ring of Honor and talking about those guys that I just mentioned, could you see the Illich family at some point in the next maybe 5-10 years, whatever, kind of implementing that at the LCA?
I think it's what they have to do if they want to do it, because so many of these guys, I mean, to me, it reminds me of when you didn't see Red Kelly's number come up till he almost passed away before his number was retired. You look at Sid Abel and Ted Lindsay's and Alex Delvecchio's numbers not going up till, 91, 92? They were in their 60s and 70s already. Right now they've got a group of these guys that are all in their 50s and 60s. They're still hearty and hale. They're able to do the promotional tour. They're able to do the speeches. They're able to put on the blazers or get the rings or get the banner or like the Michigan Sports Hall of Fame used to be. I don't know if anybody remembers this, but the Michigan Sports Hall of Fame still doesn't have a home. And the Michigan Sports Hall of Fame's plaques used to be in the basement of Cobo Hall. They were in the very bottom row, and Ted Lindsay, Gordie Howe, and Barry Sanders had plaques in the basement of Cobo Hall. How lame is that? When you can bring these guys in for a ceremony, bring them out on the ice, or have a nice little press conference, have a bobblehead game, sell tickets. Make promotional, like what they did with Fedorov that was so smart was they made the book available for $40 with $20 shipping.
Well, the book was $40, George. It was $280 if you had it personally signed by him.
Wow. And then you can do that.
And guess what?
Over again.
Those sold out before the first intermission.
I believe it.
And I think people would have that same kind of reaction if you did do a grind line night. And nowadays with the technology and those LED rings they have around the arena, you don't even have to put up something permanently. You can just have it light up at different parts of the game, but you're still honoring the past and the tradition of our an original six team, one of the most iconic franchises in NHL history. I really hope that the front office and the organization really looked at Fedorov weekend, because it was amazing, and the fan turnout, the reaction to it was something special, and they need to find a way to honor that their past of the 25 straight years of playoffs, the 4 Stanley Cups that happened, and I think there's a way that you don't want those players to be forgotten moving forward into the future. I think there's guys like we just talked about that I'd love to see. Devin, what's some names that you think should be up there outside of the grind line, maybe outside of Konstantinov?
Well, just real quick, just because I love Draper as like a launch point for this conversation. Because at this point, I also think it's not just about what he did as a player. Like he's actively shaping the future of the Red Wings as the assistant general manager and head of pros. Like aside from Larkin at this point, every young player that's a key fixture of this team's present and future was drafted by Chris Draper. Like at this point, you gotta commemorate him for what he did as a player, but also as a builder. If Steve Yzerman's 19 wasn't already in the rafters, I'd be saying the same thing because he's a general manager and he's shaping it too. But since his number is up there, I feel like Draper is kind of building like a second resume for recognition as well. And I think that's significant. And for what it's worth, I think that when Yzerman decides that he's had enough general managing, I kind of think Draper's the GM in waiting. So that might add to the resume as well. But other names that I think really deserve this, I think Thomas Holmstrom's somebody that comes to mind. He's one of those era-defining players, I think, for the Red Wings as well.
Osgood
is definitely one, and he's an interesting one to me. He's kind of in the same category as Henrik Zetterberg in the sense that like you can make a really good argument that they belong in the Hall of Fame, and once you're in the Hall of Fame, then you can make an argument that they need to have their number up there in the first place. But if they're gonna fall short, they're not gonna make the Hall of Fame, they're not gonna get the number retired, then both of those guys absolutely need that some sort of honor like that. I would argue that just about any captain of the Red Wings should have some sort of recognition, maybe some more than others, but I think there's something to that. I mean, you can go so deep down this rabbit hole. There's all sorts of players that deserve recognition for some reason. You mentioned the grind line. That's a really good one. You could honor like the Russian 5 as a whole. Obviously, Sergei's 91 is up there now, but maybe the other 4. I fully agree with the idea that Vladdy's 16 needs to be up there. But if we're not going to do that, then he needs recognition in some way, shape, or form. If I talk for 5 more minutes, I'm sure I can think of 15 more people that this applies to.
I got
what
one
about Shanahan?
A Shanahan night and a Bob Probert night. Imagine how much mean gear you
that's
could
a great
sell
one.
on a Shanahan night.
But then you're putting yourself down a dangerous wormhole because now you're talking Joey Kosher.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing is how exclusive does the club have to be? We know that the retirement club is extraordinarily exclusive with this team,
Right.
as it should be,
right?
Because this is an original 6 team, but how exclusive is too exclusive? How inclusive is too inclusive? This is where and this is why I was doing that thing with my hands. This is where Mrs. Illich, Chris Illich, Jimmy Devellano bump up against the younger generation of people like us, people like the Keith Gaves and Mickey Redmonds of the world who believe that maybe there should be more there should be more honors and there should be more recognition for players who, as Devin so expertly said, built the franchise and built the fan base. Players who built the Joe. That we did eras. We're still doing eras this year, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's the original team era. There was the start of the Red Wings era. There was the there was the Olympia era. Now they did the Joe Louis Arena era, and now they're going to do the Little Caesars Arena era. And you think how they could just tie those things into each other. And to me, it's a no-brainer, not only to give these guys the honor while they're still with us, which is the most important part, because, you look at the 91-92 team, what I started out as a fan. We don't have Proby with us. Vladdy is in a wheelchair. We don't have Steve Chason with us. We don't have Sean Burr with us. It's just time. And like somebody had made a good observation, I think it was actually The Athletic of all places, that said, where's Ken Daniels' Foster Hewitt Award in the Hockey Hall of Fame, or Joe Beninati from the Capitals? Why aren't we? Why do we have to wait until? Why did somebody have to? I mean, I'm not a fan of Stan Fischler, but the gentleman who wrote for the Rangers, the Islanders, the Devils, this guy didn't get into the Hall of Fame until he was 90. What the hell?
I also think too that the Ring of Honor lets you honor people that you wouldn't be able to honor with just the general jersey retirement. Like you mentioned Ken Daniels. Ken Daniels and Mickey Redmond are synonymous with Red Wings hockey, and I think that they deserve some sort of recognition. I think the broadcast booth will probably be named after them or something like that. But I feel like that's something that you could kind of get creative with. Give them recognition. I think Scotty Bowman you could probably induct into the Ring of Honor. He ended the drought, right? I also, maybe this is a little too self-congratulatory, but I think about Mike Ilitch. What about him? I mean, he literally revived the franchise. I mean, the building's his basically for all intents and purposes, but again, maybe a little too self-congratulatory, but he's a very huge figure in Red Wings history. They probably don't win any of these championships without him. So like I said, I think it gives you the opportunity to recognize players that aren't quite at that top tier to where they deserve their number up there, but it also lets you recognize people that you wouldn't necessarily be able to recognize because they're not players. And I think that's maybe the biggest reason why I would be pounding the table for this idea.
Well, I think it's very important to recognize history, especially with this iconic original six franchise, and it'd be great to see the organization come up with some kind of plan to do something like this. And at the end of the day, we all know what it's about anyway. You're going to sell tickets, and you're going to make merch, and you're going to make money. So,
I just want to throw this out there real quick. Again, and I don't want to be too morbid, but I'm a caregiver for an 83-year-old who's going to be 84. Mickey Redmond is 78 years old. You have absolutely, especially as a sports franchise, there's a responsibility to take care of your own, and there's a responsibility to make the best of what you got while the people are here. And the thing for me with the Stanley Cup years, if you look at 97, 98, 02, 08, the Joe's Stanley Cup years, again, these guys are in their 50s. These guys are in their 60s. They are more than able to be around for a while and to give you a great press conference, to give you a little mini Detroit sports media tour, put them on WDET, put them on the Fan, God knows, or the ticket, pardon me. Can you imagine 97.1, the ticket, actually doing some Red Wings related programming that isn't game related because there's a special night? It sells tickets, it makes money, and you are honoring the people while they are here with us. That is so important to me. And, that's one of the reasons I'm wearing that on my head.
You got to think they'll do a big night for Mickey at some point in the near future. When he decides to hang it up, because that's gonna be a big one, and that's gonna be a real big one. All right, guys, we got to get wrapping here soon. But Devin, I know you got 2 quick news and notes for us. Would you like to tell me how my alma mater is going to be in good shape again as far as goaltending next season?
Yes, so we're talking about Ravens on this one, and not the Baltimore ones that just hired Jesse Minter as their head coach. No, we're talking about Ravensburgen, the goalie that
You had to throw that in
Ravensburgen.
there.
Sorry, that just that that just committed to Michigan State University, will be joining the Spartans next season. He's definitely in that conversation of top goalie prospects in the world. He's going to be a really good one. And I think maybe the biggest reason that we're talking about it on this podcast is that it sure seems to, at least to me, indicate that Trey Augustine will in fact be is in fact in his final season with the Spartans, and will be going pro at the end of this season. Obviously, we assume it's going to be with the Red Wings. Nothing is final until a contract is signed, but it was nice to see that news and kind of think, all right, this is probably going to be the year. Oh boy, what are they going to do with all their goalies? But we'll talk about that when we get when we get there.
Until he's traded for Werenski. Anyway. Stadium series.
Are you just real quick, Evan? Are you excited about this addition for your Spartans?
Yeah, I mean it's hard to watch a lot of MSU hockey. I catch maybe 2 or 3 games a year. You know, I'll definitely read up on like what they're doing. You know, Caden Lidstrom this year, Porter Martone, Trey Augustine. You know, they're a wagon. Michigan looks really good too this year. That Jack Ivankovic kid, their goaltender, looks like he might be something special too. I'm excited about it, but I'm also excited for this Trey Augustine Kosa era. I'm ready for it to start. You know, especially when we're seeing what Wallstedt's doing and what he was doing in Minnesota, and I'm ready for the future, man. I'm ready.
Jesper supposedly on the trade block, Wallstedt, by the way.
Right.
Interested to see that. But looking ahead to February 1st, just a few days away from when we're recording here, the Stadium Series between the Boston Bruins and the Tampa Bay Lightning, it will take place. Big commotion on this one happened when kind of the layout of what not necessarily the rink, but the surrounding area of the rink looks like. It's basically a big treasure map. Some kind of Easter eggs on the locations there. Definitely, given that it's at the Buccaneers stadium, nice little touch. You know, definitely them having fun with the concept, having fun with the location. Obviously, we talked with Travis before about how the uniforms they're wearing, both teams are wearing at this event, maybe missed the mark, but at least it seems like they found a good theme with this one. I'm hopeful that it's going to be fun. Obviously, last year's Stadium Series was a lot of fun. Can't imagine why. I'm curious, are either of you guys planning to watch this one?
I don't know. I still like what we talked about a few weeks back. I want to see some more iconic places in cold weather situations.
Didn't they just announce that the next Stadium Series is going to be in Dallas? I think that was today.
Yeah, but they're also doing Utah as well.
Yeah, they're doing Utah and Dallas, and yeah, I will say this about the whole pirate theme and the treasure theme. They have this huge festival in Tampa Bay called Gasparilla, and they're so big into it, and that's why they're doing the pirate theme. Is it happens right around now, and so that's all personalization for Tampa Bay and for the west coast of Florida, as they say.
Yeah, you mentioned Travis from Hockeytown West podcast. He was actually in Tampa this week for one of the Lightning games, and he said driving around town that there weren't too many people in Tampa that even realized that the Stadium Series game was happening. So again, I don't know. I'm not feeling these warm weather cities and games. I think it takes away from how hockey's supposed to be played in outdoor cold weather. But to each their own. Saturday, the Red Wings will host the Avs at 1 p.m. Eastern start at the LCA. And then Monday in Colorado at Ball Arena, we'll face the Avs again. And then last game before the Olympic break, they'll take on the Mammoth on Wednesday. And then the Red Wings won't return till February 26th against Ottawa. We will be back next week to recap these two Colorado and Mammoth games. I'm really hoping that the Avalanche are keeping up this trend up, getting whooped last couple games. So hopefully the Red Wings can get a couple points out of there so we can feel good going into the break. That's going to do it for episode 70 of the Flying Octopus podcast. Luckily, we're going to hit 71 and Dylan's big ass right on our last show before the Olympic break. So until next week, we'll see you then. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Flying Octopus podcast. Follow us on YouTube at the Flying Octopus channel and Twitter at Flying Octopod.